Cemeteries aren't just full of memories. They're packed with secrets, things that shouldn't be there, and stories that should have stayed untold. Tonight, you'll hear creepy cemetery stories that'll make you avoid graveyards after dark. Like this one about a kid who wandered off during their grandma's funeral and found out that the dead aren't the only thing to fear in a cemetery. Before we get into it, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a nightmare fuel story. The black dress itched my knees and the ribbon in my hair was too tight. "Stay still, Lisa," my mother whispered. But I couldn't stand being in that chapel full of strange, crying people any longer. Grandma was inside a white box covered in flowers, flowers that smelled like the market when we passed by the produce section at the end of the day. The smell of dead things. The cemetery was a maze of old stones with noseless angels. I saw my mother's hands trembling as they held her handkerchief. But what really caught my attention was the playground. On the other side of the rusty wall, the red swing swayed alone in the wind, as if someone invisible was playing there. "I'm going over there," I announced to no one in particular. My escape was easy. The adults were too busy being adults. I ran across the damp grass, slipped under a crooked gate, and suddenly I was in that colorful place in the middle of the gray world. The playground was older than it seemed from afar. The equipment was rusty, the sand was full of stones, and someone had written swear words on the slide. But it was better than listening to the priest talk. I climbed onto the highest swing and tried to push myself with my feet, but I didn't go far. That's when I felt the cold on the back of my neck. "Need some help, little princess?" The man wore a navy blue coat, the kind bus drivers wear. His teeth were yellow, and he smelled of cigarettes and hand sanitizer. The same smell as the health clinic where Grandma used to take me for my shots. Before I could answer, his rough hands were already pushing my back too hard. "This way you'll see the angels up close," he laughed as I screamed. The world turned into a blur every time I swung backward. I could see the cemetery below between my legs, the tombstones looking like rotten teeth in the earth. When the swing began to slow down, he suddenly grabbed the chains, stopping with a jerk that made me bite my tongue. The taste of blood filled my mouth. "Did you know there's a treasure hidden back there behind the graves?" He pointed to the darkest corner of the cemetery, where the trees were so thick that almost no light came through. "If you reach me, I'll give you a present." His smile was no longer that of a playful adult. It was the expression Uncle Bob had when he saw us eating guava paste before lunch, pretending to be mad, but enjoying the disobedience. He started walking backward, keeping his eyes fixed on me as I got off the swing. His sneakers made the sound of duct tape on the sand. Something about this game made me stop. It was the way he looked at my dress, at the ribbon in my hair, at the way I rubbed my leg scratched by the swing chain. That's when I heard the sound of metal clanging. My mother was on the other side of the wall, banging a wooden spoon against an empty flower pot, the same sound she made to call me for dinner. The man in the blue coat froze. "Lisa, where are you?" Her voice came from far away, but each syllable sounded like a gunshot. The man squatted down to my height so fast that I felt his cold breath on my face. "If you tell anyone we played, your grandma will wake up in her coffin to come get you," he whispered. The smell of hand sanitizer burned my nostrils. Lying children go to the same place as stray animals when they sleep forever. My right hand closed around a sharp stone from the sand. I didn't know yet that this afternoon wasn't about swings or lies. It was about the blue car parked near the pine trees, about the fact that he had already opened the passenger door before even seeing me. And it was about the scream coming from the cemetery, so loud that even the crows stopped cawing. My mother's scream cut through the air like a machete. Before I could react, I saw her jumping over the low cemetery wall, her black dress tearing on the bricks. The man in the blue coat didn't have time to run. She grabbed him by the collar with a strength I didn't know existed in her fine hands. Those hands that sewed my dresses and caressed my forehead when I had a fever. "What are you doing with my daughter, you bastard?" Her voice didn't sound human. It was hoarse, full of a hatred that even the crows on the wall were startled and flew away. The man tried to break free, but my mother had already taken the stone I was holding and hit him on the forehead. Dark blood flowed quickly, mixing with the cheap makeup he used to hide a scar on his eyebrow. That's when the rest of the family arrived. My Uncle Carl, the bricklayer, arrived first. He had arms so large they looked like they could rip doors off just by breathing near them. He grabbed the man by the neck like he was a trash bag. "It's him. The so-called blue coat they were talking about on the news," he yelled. Someone let out a swear word I had never heard. The man started to cry. "I was just playing with the girl, I swear to God." A kick to the stomach silenced him. My Aunt Maria, who always took me to eat cornmeal cake, spat in his face. "Playing? Like you played with the kids from the Saint Jouan neighborhood? Like you played with Mrs. Marta's daughter, who never came home again?" I didn't understand. I stood still, with the stone still in my hand, watching this man who minutes before had been pushing my swing now writhing on the ground, vomiting blood and broken teeth. His blue car was still there, the door open like a dark mouth. Inside, I saw things that didn't make sense to my 6-year-old mind. Ropes, a roll of wide adhesive tape, and a dirty teddy bear stained with something brown and dry. My mother pulled me back, covering my eyes. "Don't look, honey, don't look." But I had already seen. Someone shouted police and the mood changed. The man took advantage of the distraction and crawled like a sick dog toward the car. My uncle went to get him, but my grandma, the dead one, the one who was supposed to be in the box of wilted flowers, appeared out of nowhere. No, it wasn't her. It was just an old lady in black, with the same flip-flops my grandma used to wear. But at that moment, with the low sun and my eyes full of tears, I swore it was Grandma coming to get me. The commotion was big enough for the man in the blue coat to get into the car and speed off, almost running over the gravedigger who was running. The police arrived late, as always. They asked questions, took notes, but everyone already knew how it would end. "This guy won't bother anyone anymore," the police officer told my mother, in a tone that wasn't a promise, but a warning. That night, while my mother taught me how to remove bloodstains from the black dress, with cold water and laundry soap, never hot, she told me about the other children, about what men like him did, about the teddy bear in the car, and it was only then, with the smell of bleach burning my nose, that I understood. The real danger had never been the cemetery or the dead. It was the empty swing swaying alone in the wind. It was the smile of someone pretending to be human. It was the smell of hand sanitizer that still clung to my skin. Years later, I found out they never caught the man in the blue coat. The police found the car abandoned near the river, with the back seat stained with things no one wanted to describe to me. My mother kept watch at the front door for months, a kitchen knife hidden in her apron. I never played on swings again. Sometimes when I pass by the cemetery, I look at the empty playground. The colors have faded, the iron has rusted, but I can still hear the creaking of the chains in the wind. And I wonder, how many other children did he push before me? How many flew too high and never came down? My grandma is down there under the ground, but the fear he planted in me grows like a weed. I learned that monsters don't die. They just change coats, and they wait patiently for the next funeral, for the next bored child, for the next empty swing. The worst part isn't remembering. It's knowing that he might be remembering too, and smiling, with that same smile that never reached his eyes. Wow, that's really weird. What did you think of the story? Rate it from 0 to 10 in the comments. The scariest part is thinking that sometimes the greatest danger doesn't come from the supernatural. It comes from people of flesh and blood. But sometimes you can't escape what's not of this world, like in the story you're about to see. Something tugged at my shirt as I walked through the cemetery that night. It wasn't the wind. The air was still, the kind that clings to your skin. And it wasn't my dogs, because both were ahead of me, pulling at their leashes as if they wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. I ignored it. After all, after 6 years of living next to a Civil War cemetery, you learn to live with the chills. But that night was different. My routine was always the same. Remote work, cold coffee forgotten on the table, and walks with Thor and Luna, my 2 German shepherds. They loved running among the old tombstones, But that night they were acting strange. Their fur was bristled, ears perked up as if they heard something I couldn't. I decided to cut the walk short. That's when I felt it again, a firm tug on my shirt, as if someone had grabbed the hem of the fabric and yanked it. My heart skipped a beat, but I turned quickly, lighting up the darkness with my phone's flashlight. Nothing, just the moss-covered headstones and that heavy silence, the kind that seems to swallow even the sound of your own breath. "Come on, guys. That's enough for today," I told the dogs, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. When I got home, I noticed my backpack was open. Strange, because I was sure I had zipped it up before leaving. I leaned in to look and, oh my God, there was something inside. It wasn't mine. A package wrapped in a dirty cloth tied with a ribbon that looked like hair. I didn't touch it. I threw the backpack on the floor and backed away as if it might explode. Thor and Luna growled low, their eyes fixed on the backpack. I decided to let it go. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks after that feeling in the cemetery. I went to take a shower, needing to wash off that unease. The hot water helped until I felt something scratch my back. It wasn't my nails, it wasn't the soap. It was as if thin, bony fingers had trailed down my skin. I screamed and turned, but of course there was no one there. Just the steam from the shower and that strange smell, like wet earth and old flowers. When I got out, I dried off quickly, eager to get dressed and call my husband. But my clothes, they weren't there anymore. I had left everything on the little stool, but now only the wet towel remained. And then I heard it, a laugh. Low, hoarse, as if it came from someone very old or very sick. It came from the hallway, from outside the door. My dog started barking like crazy and the bathroom doorknob moved, slowly, as if someone were testing to see if it was locked. But I lived alone. "Who's there?" I shouted, holding the towel with trembling hands. Nothing, just the silence again. Until, bam, something hit the bedroom door so hard it made the frame shake. Thor and Luna lunged toward the noise, growling as if they had seen the devil himself. And then, another thud, this time on the bathroom door. I nearly jumped back, slipping on the wet floor. When I looked at the gap under the door, I saw something dark moving slowly, as if someone were standing on the other side watching me. I didn't think twice. I grabbed my phone and called my husband, Jake, my fingers slipping on the screen. He answered on the first ring. "There's someone in the house," I said, breathless. "Jake, please come now." He arrived in less than 10 minutes, but they were the longest 10 minutes of my life. While I waited, locked in the bathroom, I heard something dragging down the hallway. And when Jake finally knocked on the door, I almost fainted with relief. I came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel with the dogs glued to my legs. The house seemed normal, except for one thing. My backpack, which I had left on the living room floor, was now thrown against the bedroom door. And when I approached, I saw what was inside. Flowers. Dry, wilted flowers, the kind left on old graves in the cemetery. Jake searched the entire house, checked the security cameras. Nothing. No movement. No sign of a break-in. Just me, the dogs, and those damned flowers that shouldn't have been there. That's when I realized someone or something had followed me home. And worse, maybe it had been here much longer than I thought. Jake insisted it must have been an animal, a possum, a raccoon, something that had come in through the backyard and scared the dogs. But I knew. Possums don't laugh. Possums don't open backpack zippers and put cemetery flowers inside them. The night was long. Neither Jake nor I could sleep properly. The dogs were restless, pacing back and forth, sniffing the air as if something invisible were looming over us. In the middle of the night, Thor started barking at the empty hallway. The fur on his back bristled. Jake grabbed a baseball bat and went to check, but of course there was nothing. The next day, I decided I needed to do something. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I called a woman a friend had recommended. Donna Marta, a lady who supposedly cleansed houses of bad energies. She answered with a calm voice, almost as if she had been expecting my call. "You live near those old graves, don't you?" she asked, even before I could explain properly. How did she know? I hadn't mentioned the cemetery. My stomach twisted. Dona Marta arrived in the late afternoon, bringing a bunch of herbs, candles, and an incense that smelled of cinnamon and something else, something bitter. She walked through the entire house, stopping every now and then, as if she heard something I couldn't. When she reached the bathroom where everything had started, she frowned. "There's something here," she said. "Something that shouldn't be." I asked her to explain, but she just shook her head, as if she didn't want to scare me more than I already was. She lit the candles, spread the herbs in the corners, and began to murmur words in a language I didn't recognize. The dogs, who normally barked at strangers, were quiet, huddled behind me. That's when the temperature dropped. Suddenly, as if someone had opened a window in the middle of winter, Dona Marta stopped mid-prayer and stared fixedly at the bathroom mirror. "You brought something into the house," she said slowly. "Something that was out there, and now it thinks it belongs here." I remembered the backpack, the flowers, that laugh. My heart was beating so hard I almost didn't hear what she said next. "There's a woman here. She's not angry, just confused. She thinks this house is still hers." Jake looked skeptical, but I felt a chill run down my spine. The house was old, over 100 years old. How many people had lived here? How many had died within these walls? Dona Marta continued the ritual, but I couldn't take my eyes off the hallway. I had the feeling that if I looked long enough, I would see something, a shadow, a figure, anything. And then I heard it. A whisper. So low I almost thought I had imagined it. It came from behind me, near the bedroom door. Jake didn't react. He hadn't heard it. But Dona Marta stopped again and turned her head, as if someone had called her name. "She's here now," she said softly. "Don't look. Don't run. Just let her go away." My body froze. It was as if the air had turned to ice around me. And then, a touch. Light, almost imperceptible on the back of my neck, as if someone had run their fingers through my hair. I almost screamed, but Dona Marta held me by the arm. "Don't react," she ordered. The dog started to growl, staring fixedly at the empty space behind me. And then, as if someone had pulled an invisible string, the pressure in the air vanished. The temperature returned to normal. The candles stopped trembling. Dona Marta took a deep breath. "She's gone." Jake looked at me, still skeptical but relieved. I wanted to believe it was just suggestion, that everything had been the fault of fatigue and stress. But that night, when I went to bed, I saw something on the hallway floor. A single wilted flower like those from the cemetery, as if someone had left it there on purpose. I picked it up and threw it away, but one thing I knew. Some doors, once opened, don't close so easily. And I wasn't sure if mine was really locked. How scary. And look, after going through something like that, some people think they'll never feel so much fear again. Only sometimes, what seems harmless, like a simple child, can hide a mystery that to this day no one can explain. And that's what the next story is about. I saw him again today. The boy with the blue cape standing at the door of the preparation room, quiet, just looking at me with those big dark eyes. This time, he was holding one of the dolls that had fallen off the table earlier, and I swear I had put all of them back in place. But let's start from the beginning. My name is Lillian, and I grew up among coffins, flower wreaths, and stories that most people only hear in horror movies. My family owns an old funeral home in London, with red brick walls and a cemetery right behind it. Since I was little, I've seen things that others don't. You know that feeling of being watched when you're alone? Well, I had that every day. The first coffin I remember helping to decorate was blue, small, the size of a child. It had superhero stickers on the lid. The boy's father insisted on that. He said his son loved Spider-Man and Captain America. I was about 12 at the time and thought it was strange to decorate a coffin like a toy. But now I understand. It was the last thing they could do for him. After the burial, strange things started to happen. I used to play with old dolls that were on a shelf in the funeral home, leftovers from a time when wakes were more domestic. One day, I was alone, tidying up the room when 3 dolls fell to the floor, one after the other. No wind, no tremor, just the dry sound of wood hitting the floor. That's when I looked at the door. He was there. A thin boy with dark hair and a blue cape around his neck, like those toy superhero capes. He didn't speak, didn't smile. He just stared at me, as if he was waiting for something. My heart raced, but I wasn't scared. It was more like curiosity. "Do you want to come in?" I asked, not knowing what else to say. He didn't answer. He just stood there, motionless. I approached slowly, and when I was a couple of steps away, I closed the door. Not out of fear, but because I knew he wouldn't disappear just because of that. And I was right. When I opened it again, he was still there. It was only when I told my mother that things got scarier. I described the boy, the cape, the quiet way, the eyes that seemed too big for his face. She turned pale. "Lillian, that's Charlie, the boy from the blue coffin." After that, he started appearing more often, always suddenly, always in silence. The dolls would disappear and reappear in other places. Wreath flowers were found scattered on the floor, even though no one had touched them. And once, I swear, I saw one of the superhero stickers stuck on the hallway mirror, the same one that was on his coffin. I started talking to him even without a response. "Good morning, Charlie," or "Don't mess with my things, okay?" And strangely, the mischief decreased. It was as if he just wanted attention. But then one night I saw something else. I was closing the funeral home when I looked out the window at the cemetery. There, among the tombstones, was a woman, all in black with long, dark hair, standing in front of a gravestone. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. She just existed. And when I blinked, she was gone. The next day, I found out that the tomb where she was standing belonged to a man who had died 20 years ago. And apparently, I wasn't the only person the cemetery wouldn't let go. I didn't tell anyone about the woman. Not right away. First, I wanted to be sure it wasn't just my mind playing tricks on me. After all, after Charlie, I no longer knew what was imagination and what was real. But she came back. The following week, I was helping to prepare a wake when I felt that chill on the back of my neck, that shiver that doesn't come from the wind. I looked out the window and there she was again, standing at the same tomb. This time, closer, as if she was staring at me. I decided to investigate. After everyone had left, I took a flashlight and went to the tomb where she always appeared. The gravestone was simple, almost worn by time. James Whitaker, 1952-1983. Rest in peace. Nothing special. But when I ran my hand over the stone, I felt something strange. A heavy energy, the kind that sticks to your skin. That's when I heard the crying. Soft, almost a whisper, coming from behind a tree near the wall. My body froze, but I knew it was him. "Charlie," I called softly. The boy appeared, his blue cape fluttering, even though there was no wind. This time he wasn't alone. Beside him, like a pale shadow, was the woman in black. She wasn't crying, but her eyes. God, her eyes were full of sadness. Charlie pointed to the tomb and then to the woman, as if trying to explain something. I didn't understand, but I felt it right away. She was James's mother, and she wasn't there by accident. The next day, I looked for information. My mother knew everything, of course. "Ah, Lillian, that story is old," she said, arranging a vase of flowers. "Mrs. Eleanor Whitaker buried her son here after he took his own life. They say she came every day until she died. She never got over it. And Charlie? What does he have to do with this?" My mother stopped, looked at me seriously. "Charlie died the same year as James, car accident. His family is buried here too." That gave me a shock. Was he trying to show me something? That night I returned to the cemetery, and there they were. The boy in the blue cape and the woman in black, now side by side in front of James's tomb. This time, Eleanor saw me. She raised her hand slowly, pointing to something behind me. When I turned, I saw a row of old crosses, almost hidden in the grass, and among them a small gravestone I had never noticed. Charles Charlie Green, 1975-1983, flew to the heavens. He smiled for the first time, and then he disappeared. He just wanted someone to remember him, and her. Now, every time I pass by that part of the cemetery, I leave a toy or a flower, because some ghosts don't haunt. They just want to know they still matter. And the woman in black? Well, she never appeared again. But sometimes late at night I still hear someone crying near James's tomb, and I pretend I don't hear. Creepy, huh? The strange thing is that the more you hear these stories, the more you realize that certain encounters are not by chance. And sometimes, it's not a person, not a child, it's a whole group that appears out of nowhere in the middle of the night. And that's exactly what you're about to see. But before we continue with the story, if you've made it this far, it means you're enjoying our stories, so go ahead and leave a like to let YouTube know you enjoy this type of content and don't want to miss any more horror stories. The first time I saw the procession in the cemetery, my entire body went on strike. My legs locked up, my hands turned as cold as marble, and my heart? It beat so hard I could almost hear my ribs cracking. I had been the priest of that church for nearly a decade, and until then, I thought I knew every shadow of that place. The cemetery was just a plot of land with crosses and wilted flowers, prayers recited automatically, until that damned night. I was finishing up locking the church when I heard it, a wet drag, as if someone were pulling a sack of dirt across the ground. I stopped with the key in the lock, my skin crawling. It's just a possum, I thought, or a drunk. There's always a drunk. But when I looked out the window, there was nothing. Just the low mist clinging to the ground like old cigarette smoke. Then came the smell, wet earth and something sour, like meat left in the sun. My stomach turned. Go home, you idiot. You can check tomorrow. But priests have obligations, don't they? I grabbed the flashlight, which of course chose that exact moment to flicker weakly, and went out. The air was freezing. Not the normal cold of the night, but the kind of cold that comes from within. As if someone had stuck an ice needle into the back of my neck. The flashlight only illuminated a meter ahead, and the shadows among the tombstones seemed denser, almost solid. That's when I heard it. A murmur. It didn't come from one place. It came from everywhere, as if the ground itself was whispering. My fingers began to tingle, and my tongue felt heavy in my mouth, as if I had licked a battery. It's hysteria. You read too much Stephen King this week. Then, I saw the movement. Far in the distance, among the oldest graves, those that no longer had names, tall, thin things dragged themselves in a line. They weren't people. They weren't animals. They were outlines, as if someone had cut pieces of darkness and shaped them like people. The flashlight went out. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! My hands were sweating so much I almost dropped the damn thing. When I hit it, the light came back on, weak, yellowed, and illuminated one of the figures. It had stopped, and even without eyes, without a face, without anything, I knew it was staring at me. My chest tightened, as if a giant hand had closed around my ribs. Their chanting continued, but now I understood. It wasn't music. It was a call, and I wasn't invited. Then the scariest thing happened. The figure stretched its neck. Not like a person, like something that only imitated a person. A dry creak of bone twisting, and that faceless head came toward me. That's when my body finally decided to cooperate. I turned and ran. I didn't even look back. I felt the cold air scratching my throat, my feet hitting the stones of the path. The church door seemed to take an hour to open, and when I finally got inside, locking everything, my knee gave out. I stayed there, leaning against the door frame, sweating like crazy, with one certainty. That procession was not of the living. And worse, something from them had seen me. The next day, I pretended nothing had happened, until I got the cemetery records and discovered that Caleb Dusk had not rested in peace. I woke up with a stiff neck and my shirt stuck to my back with sweat. The daylight coming through the window should have made everything less scary, but I still felt that chill down my spine, as if something had stuck to me. It was a dream, or a nightmare, or, I don't know, lack of coffee. But I knew it wasn't. My hands were still shaking as I held the cup, and that voice in the back of my head kept repeating, You were seen. I went to the church archives where we keep the old burial records. Dust flew up when I opened the first book, and the smell of moldy paper almost made me sneeze. I flipped through the pages until I reached the oldest section, the one no one had touched for decades. And that's where I found the name, Caleb Dusk, buried on September 12, 1919 at just 24 years old. The cause of death? Fever of unknown origin. Nothing unusual, except for the rest. In small, almost faded handwriting, someone had written, Requiem aeternum non dedit. Latin, eternal rest was not given. My finger trembled as I passed over the phrase. Why on earth would someone write that in a cemetery record? And why would Caleb, a guy who died of fever 100 years ago, have a procession of things visiting his grave? I decided to take a look at the site. The sun was already low when I reached the farthest corner of the cemetery, where the old tombstones seemed to have been forgotten by time. Caleb's was small, almost swallowed by the earth, with the inscription already worn by the rain. But there was something strange. The ground around it was sunken. It wasn't normal erosion. It looked as if someone, or something, had dug there recently. And worse, it smelled rotten. Not the smell of wet earth, but something fresh, like meat spoiled in the sun. My phone rang. I almost jumped out of my skin. It was the sexton telling me there was a baptism scheduled for tomorrow. I hung up and took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. That's when I heard it. A drag, just like the night before. My blood turned to ice. I turned slowly, looking at the path between the tombstones. Nothing, just the wind blowing the branches of the trees. It's your head playing tricks on you. Then I saw it, a dark stain on the ground, near the fence. It wasn't a shadow. It was wet, as if it had leaked from the soil. And it was moving, slowly, almost imperceptibly, creeping toward Caleb's grave. My legs threatened to give way. This isn't right, this isn't right. The stain stopped, and then something inside it moved. I didn't have time to see properly. A sharp pain exploded in the back of my neck as if an ice knife had entered. And for a second, I heard something whisper in my ear. You shouldn't have come back. I ran. This time I didn't even look back. I returned to the cemetery that night with a bottle of holy water and a faith that was more cracked than the church's stained glass. I knew I shouldn't go. I had even left the gate keys with the sexton, swearing to myself that I wouldn't set foot there again. But when the sun set, something pulled my legs there, as if I had a magnet in my blood. The moon was full, illuminating the tombstones in a bluish tone that made everything seem fake. Even the air was different, heavy, too sweet, like rotting fruit. I got close to Caleb's grave and almost vomited. The earth had been excavated, not by human hands. The marks were narrow, deep, as if claws had dug. And in the center of the hole, the coffin was open, empty, but not completely. Something dark covered the interior, pulsing slowly, like breathing. The holy water in my hand trembled. It's now or never. I threw it. The liquid hit the coffin with a hiss, and the entire cemetery groaned. The trees shook without wind, the tombstones vibrated, and suddenly, they returned. The figures. They emerged from the darkness like smoke rising from the ground, forming that damned procession again. Only this time, in the center of them, there was a denser, more real silhouette. Caleb. Not as a corpse, not as a ghost, but as something in between. The skin clinging to the bones, the sunken eyes glowing with a light that wasn't the moon's reflection. He opened his mouth, and the sound that came out wasn't human. You interrupted the ritual. My legs failed me. I fell to my knees, the holy water now spilled on the ground. The figures approached, and I finally understood. That procession wasn't for Caleb to rest. It was to keep him from rising. And I had just set him free. The last thing I saw was his hand, more bones than flesh stretching toward me. And then, darkness. When I woke up in the hospital 3 days later, the doctors said they found me unconscious in the cemetery, with hypothermia and torn clothes. But I knew the truth. Caleb left me alive on purpose. The nurses thought I had gone crazy. The bishop told me to rest. Even the sexton looked at me with fear. But none of them saw what I saw that night. The earth of Caleb's tomb was intact again. No sign of excavation. Just the old tombstone and that heavy silence. But every night when the wind stops, I hear their chant. Lower now, almost a whisper, as if they were waiting. Sometimes when I pass by the cemetery at dusk, I see figures among the trees. They don't come closer, they don't touch me, they just watch. The old priest, retired for 20 years, came to visit me last week. He said that in 1978 they tried to exhume Caleb's body to move it. The next day, the gravedigger was found dead, with marks of burned hands on his neck. Now I understand why that procession appears. Caleb doesn't want to rest, and they won't let anyone take him from there. How scary! What did you think of the story? What rating from 0 to 10 would you give it? Leave your opinion in the comments below. The first corpse I saw in the cemetery wasn't buried. It was standing, screaming at me. That's how I met the woman who changed everything for me. My name is Carlos, and I work, or rather, worked, at St. Michael's Cemetery. It wasn't a dream job, of course. Digging graves, helping with burials, cleaning tombstones. You get used to the quiet, the smell of wet earth and wilted flowers. But I never got used to people's despair. And that woman, she was pure despair. It was on a gray afternoon, the kind where the sky seems glued to the roof of the world. I was there, leaning against the wall of the shed, smoking a cigarette, when she appeared. Suddenly, I heard hurried footsteps, almost running, and when I looked, I saw her. Brown hair flying, a black dress clinging to her body from the rain that had just started to fall. But what struck me most were her eyes, red, swollen, but with an anger that seemed to come from somewhere very deep. She came straight to me, as if I were to blame for something. "Where is he?" she shouted, her voice hoarse. I swallowed hard. "Who, ma'am?" "My father. His grave. Where is it?" I tried to stay calm. Every day there was someone like her, lost in grief. But she seemed about to explode. I pointed to the new section where they had buried an old man the previous week. She didn't even thank me. She ran off, stumbling over her own legs, and I stood there, watching, with a weight on my chest. Few hours later, as it was getting dark, I was closing the main gate when I saw her again. This time she was different, quieter, more broken. "I'm sorry for the way I spoke earlier," she said, not even looking into my eyes. Her voice was now a whisper. "Don't worry, everyone reacts differently to pain," I replied, trying to be kind. She was silent for a while, staring at the ground. Then she sat on a bench near the gate, as if she no longer had the strength to stand. I didn't know if I should leave or stay, but something held me there. "He was everything to me," she said suddenly. "My mother died when I was little, and he raised me alone. He worked as a mason, came home with calloused hands, but never complained. Never." I sat beside her, in no hurry. The wind was cold and the last ray of sun disappeared behind the trees. "He shouldn't have gone yet," she continued, and now the tears flowed again. "I should have gone in his place. He deserved to live. I don't deserve anything." That cut me. It wasn't just sadness, it was guilt, it was self-hatred. I tried to say something, anything to ease that pain, but the words seemed useless. "Do you think he would be happy seeing you like this?" I asked slowly. She looked at me as if I had said something absurd. "He loved you. No father wants to see his daughter suffering like this," I finished. She didn't respond. She just kept staring into nothing, as if she were seeing something very far away. Then suddenly she asked, "What time does the cemetery close today?" I frowned. "At 7. Why?" She stood up, rubbed her face with her hands. "Nothing. I just wanted to know." And then, without saying anything else, she turned and started walking back among the tombstones. I stood there watching with a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the wind. Something was very wrong, but I still didn't know how wrong it was going to get. When the cemetery gate creaks at night, it's not just the wind, it's someone wanting to come in, or someone trying to get out. I couldn't get that woman out of my head. I stood there for a few minutes at the gate, looking back, as if expecting to see her returning. But there was only silence and that cold which was no longer just from the weather. I decided to take one last round before closing everything just to be sure. The sky was almost black when I started walking among the tombstones. The cell phone flashlight barely illuminated 2 steps ahead, and the wind made the trees whisper things I didn't want to understand. That's when I heard a noise. Something between a moan and a sigh coming from the new section. My heart raced. "Is someone there?" I shouted, trying to hide the fear in my voice. Nothing. Just the echo of my own question. I kept walking, slower now, until I reached her father's grave, and that's when I saw her. She was lying on the fresh earth, hugging the tombstone as if it were the old man's body itself. In her hand, an empty bottle of pills. Her eyes were half closed, her breathing weak, irregular. Damn it! I fell to my knees beside her, shaking her shoulder. "Wake up! What did you do, woman?" She only moaned, almost without strength. Her skin was cold, pale. I didn't think twice. I took off my jacket, covered her, and called 911 with a trembling hand. "We need an ambulance at St. Michael's Cemetery now. There's a woman here overdosed. She's not responding well." While waiting, I tried to keep her awake. "Stay with me, come on. Don't do this. Your father didn't want this, you hear? He didn't want it." She opened her eyes a little as if seeing me from afar. "Let me go. Please. No. You're not giving up like this." The paramedics arrived quickly, but to me it seemed like hours. They put her on the stretcher, inserted those tubes, and I just stood there feeling an emptiness that not even the deepest grave in that cemetery had. The next day I found out she had survived, but that broke me. I kept reliving everything. Her anger, her pain, the way she looked at me before closing her eyes. I wasn't an emotional guy, but that night, in my empty apartment, I cried as I hadn't in years. The next day, I quit my job. The boss tried to argue, but I was already decided. I couldn't take it anymore. That place wasn't just where the dead rested, it was where the living got lost, and I didn't want to be a part of that anymore. Before leaving for the last time, I stopped at the florist and bought a bouquet of daisies. Simple, without fuss. I had them delivered to the hospital with a note. Life is a grave we dig ourselves, or else it's the seed we plant on top of it. Choose to grow. Carlos. I don't know if she read it. I don't know if she got better, but I hope so. Because in the end, the cemetery is no place for the living to give up. It's for those who have gone to rest in peace. And us, the living, we have to carry their weight, yes, but we also have to move on. And sometimes, just by reaching out to those who are falling, we save not only them, but ourselves. If there's one thing I've learned in all this time digging holes for others, it's that death is certain. But life, life is what we make of it while we can, and no one deserves to be buried before their time. You made it this far? Hell yeah, you're one of us now. Comment "graveyard shift" below, just so I know who's still watching. If you're vibing with this, drop a like and subscribe for more horror. Oh, and check out the video next to this one, if you dare. Let's keep this nightmare going.